Morning of first full day in Prague. We're heading to the town square. This is just a few steps from our hotel along the route. Some beautiful buildings. A crowd has formed near the old clock tower, waiting for the hour to strike. We're just before 10 a.m. This is Old Town Square, and it is filling up with the different tour groups. Junior groundskeepers. About to enjoy our first treat picked up in a bake shop on the way. This is the organ Mozart played in St. Nicholas Church. It's on the Old Town Square. And they still have concerts, including organ play. At the castle complex. Our first chimney cakes. Chocolate goes on inside. We hope the bee doesn't go in too. Very nice. And there they go. Part of the castle complex. Just admiring the work on the stone. It's all scored. Okay, we're at the Pinchas Synagogue, which is no longer a functioning synagogue. It acts as a memorial for those individuals and communities that were destroyed during the Holocaust. On the bima, this is the shulchan, which is in fact made of stone. From the women's gallery, you can look down on the bima and appreciate the windows. Across the hall from the women's gallery is a gallery of the art created by the children of Theresienstadt. Okay, we're entering the Old Jewish Cemetery, which is located just by the Pinchas Synagogue. The cemetery was initially established in 1680, and the burials eventually took place one atop the next. Clausen Synagogue, built after the fire in the Jewish ghetto of 1689. Rabbi Lowe, rabbi here, and now it serves as an exhibit hall, Jewish culture and everyday life. Next to the Clausen Synagogue, this building was dedicated for the preparation of those who passed. So Taharot, Shomer, were all done in this building. This room includes artifacts from the Chevra Kadisha, including descriptions of their annual banquets. We're in the Spanish synagogue now. This building dates from 1867, after the emancipation of Bohemian Jewish community. The decoration is paint over stucco over wood. Of course, the Moorish elements, because this is the Spanish synagogue. Notably, this bima is at the front of the sanctuary, not in the center of the congregation. The organ above speaks to the fact that this building served as a center of cultural activities for the Jewish community, so secular music would be played here. From the Women's Gallery. You can still see the organ and the pipes. Example of the painted glass, not leaded, but beautiful detail. In the Jerusalem Synagogue, taking its name from the street originally named the Jubilee Synagogue. The synagogue is the most recent building of all of the synagogues in the Old Town, dedicated in 1906 on Simchat Torah. Again, Moorish style. It functions today, and services are held every Shabbat. This building perhaps is so well preserved because it functioned as the repository of those artifacts connected to the Jewish community during the time of World War II. The Aron Kodesh is blessed with these amazing doors. Rather cloudy day. We're across the river, the Palace Castle Complex. We've already been through the Schwarzburg Palace, which featured Baroque art. And we're heading into, hopefully, the castle. St. Vincent's, built over 600 years. Features many unique gargoyles and the like because different craftsmen were involved in its development. The bells are hand-rung, and we caught the noon ringing. Pulling to ring that bell. It's the golden portal, all the mosaic over the entrance to St. Wenceslas Chapel. Inside an initial hall of the Royal Palace, which dates from the 12th century, early 12th century, see vaulting, which was something of a unique feature of that time, but what I've never seen in the vaulting are some scary faces stuck in between. Makes you wonder what happened to the workmen. Quite a grand hall, all in all. The different rooms and halls would be decorated for the occasion. Some of the decorations included the lineage of the various dynasties. That's not been preserved. Tournaments of all types were even held here, as well as coronations. In a stone church with high ceilings, this was critically important, the different space heaters, if you will. This image depicts revolutionaries being tossed out of windows. Consequences led to the 30 Years' War. And we're in one of the rooms where this took place, and out these windows. It's the imperial seat in Diet Hall, and where the closest advisors would be seated. And the rest of the participants all around the seat of power. The castle suffered a number of fires over the years, including one that destroyed property information, land rolls. This room, referred to as the New Land Rolls Room, honors those various clerks with their family crests, heraldry. They were responsible for restoring some order to the chaos that resulted from the destruction of these land rolls in the mid-1300s. Amazingly, just a small snippet of the land roll survived, about a 20-year period, because somebody took their work home with them that day, and so they weren't destroyed in the fire. This stairway looks well worn. That's because the knights would sometimes ride their horses right up so that they could go straight into the Great Hall and be involved in whatever games were arranged to amuse the gentry. Approaching St. George's Basilica, which dates from the late 900s, making it by far the oldest building in this complex. Inside St. George's.
You can go like paper ticket.
Timbered ceiling inside St. George's, again from the mid-900s, refurbished late 900s. This is the chapel. The altar. Rough-hewn ceilings and remnants of the painted ceilings. This chapel is dedicated to Saint Ludmila, and here is her tomb. The ceilings over the saint's tomb, perhaps the best preserved in this building. This is the vault of St. John, over which has the depiction of the glorification. It's the backside of St. Vitus, where we heard the bells earlier. Okay, we've entered the Golden Lane, which was originally built to house the guards that worked in the castle complex. It later took on the name Golden Lane because the homes that were built here, originally for the guards, the soldiers, were then occupied by the goldsmiths. These homes now have been repurposed to show off armor of the different periods, weaponry, and down a bit further, replicas of pocket watches. So the Golden Lane, besides the armaments and watches, is home to little shops that offer all sorts of different handicrafts. Made our way down to the lower floor dungeon of the Dalibor Tower, which was in fact a prison. And this device was developed in order to lower the person down into the lower dungeon. This was a fully equipped dungeon. This prison was used for hundreds of years, and they've assembled here a number of the instruments of torture: cages, spiked devices, rack. From the balcony of the Lobkowicz Palace. Delayed entrance to the Basilica due to a performance earlier today. So we made our way in after standing on a line of probably somewhere close to 2,000 people. But this place is amazing. The colors in the windows are incredibly vibrant. It is truly a cathedral ceiling, really soaring. The statuary on either side, likely of popes and various saints from Bohemia. Various chapels dedicated to cardinals, bishops. Beyond the windows, there's beautiful artwork all over this basilica. This chapel houses St. Wenceslaus's body and the crown jewels of the state. Okay. Well, we've had our tour of the museum, explanation of the process, and now we're tasting the goods. Slivovitz from the metal, or is that the pear?
This is the pear.
Yum.
This is the oak.
Oak.
And the metal is all gone.
Oh, okay. How's that oak taste?
Smooth. Actually smoother than the metal.
And the pear?
Pear.
Flavorful, right?
Flavorful. I prefer from the oak. That's
Agreed. Chaim, we're at the Slivovitz Museum and enjoying the wares. Enjoying plum dumplings at the Slivovitz Museum. Okay, we're taking the path. We're on our way to
Hluboká nad Vltavou Castle.
Thank you, Marcus. But it is a beautiful day and we're enjoying the walk. The setting just couldn't be more perfect. Okay, we're inside the courtyard of the White Tower, and all the way around there are stags. On our way up to the tower, get a chance to see the stones. We're assuming connected to some sort of clock, maybe bell.
Yeah.
So this gear system appears to be here for our benefit, preserved, because it's no longer actually connected to anything as such. From the top of the tower, after 245 steps, this castle was originally constructed in the 13th century, underwent a number of renovations, mostly because of storm damage over the years. Gives us this perspective of the town. We're in the town of Český Krumlov now, and we're going to walk around. We're not going to do this. We had a quick drive around and got oriented, and it looks extremely charming. These bears are meant to keep this castle complex safe. Okay, so the bears are housed in what would be a moat, and most of the folks would fill it with water, but instead it's filled with this vicious, bloodthirsty teddy. All these walls are painted so that it appears of an age, and even the overhang is rather elaborate. So, last vestiges of the protective guard for this area. On the top of the tower, Off in the distance, modern apartment houses. But back here, we're in this fairy tale town. Oh my, with a river running through it. It's another view of the moat down there, and
It's in the house. It's coming out.
there's our buddy. I think it's lunchtime. Another view of Prague, Krumlov. In the town center of Prague, Krumlov, there's a fountain. The fountain has been here since the 16th century. This particular fountain was built in 1840s. The various statuary of saints are there. They remind us that the original fountain and column was constructed in memory of plague victims of the 14th century and the 15th century. These particular saints are noted for protecting the populace from plague as well as they did. It's Monday morning, and we're here in the Mazel Synagogue, named for the primary donor who created it as actually a family synagogue. And it is now home to the Museum of the Jewish Community of Prague. Contains a great many artifacts, historical artifacts going back to the late 1300s. And many of the artifacts that are contained had been collected for a museum that was to be opened after the destruction of Jewish communities to show what this population had created and what was left of them. Inside the old new synagogue appears to be a stone Aron Kodesh. This is the stender for davening. This would be the seat of the rabbi. And these discs, we assume, held candles and then allowed for reflection. Shiviti Lavonai Negdi Tamid and Dalifnei Miatalmei. The stonemasons who were building the monastery of St. Agnes were the same ones who built this structure in the last third of the 13th century. The women's section was up above behind these very narrow windows. It allowed for the women to hear the service, but an obscured view, of course. This is one of the two stone structures that were built to collect the taxes. It acted as a repository of taxes from the Jewish community. The taxes would then be paid to the government. This is the street level entrance, and it does mean that one walks down into the synagogue. It was purposely built below grade. Perhaps that was part of the agreement with the Christian authorities. It may have been part of the concept of humility on the part of the Jewish community. On our way across the river to go to the Kafka Museum, which is on the castle side, Castle Bank, and get a nice view of the Charles Bridge from here. St. Vitus Cathedral, the castle complex, about mid-river, dominates the skyline. From Old Town, to New Town, on our way to the National Museum. Inside the National Museum, which is just a piece of art all by itself. Magnificent. We're enjoying our most Czech meal since here. Got the Pilsner Urquell. We've got the potato pancakes that came in their own little dishes with sauerkraut and a sour cream and cheese condiment and some homemade bread. Heading up to the cathedral here in Bayeux, which housed the tapestry for part of its history, a couple of hundred years. Cathedral of Notre Dame. The detail is incredible. Was originally built in the 11th century and went through an internecine fight between the two sons of William the Conqueror, fires, and various other calamities, but it's here. The tapestry would be hung over the congregation during about a month in the summer as part of a particular festival. The fact that it wasn't destroyed by was probably a good deal of smoke from the incense and the like is incredible. The modern furnishings on the altar look incredibly out of place. We're going to go explore the crypt, which was also the treasury. It was a repository of many of Bayeux's different treasures. The top of the pillars down here in the crypt are decorated with depictions of different angels playing different musical instruments common in church masses. So the original elements of this structure predate Crusades by 20 years. It was dedicated in 1077 and William the Conqueror was in attendance. A memorial for those from Bayeux who died during the First World War.
Bayeux in Normandy is a charming town, some buildings dated from 1100 and many post-World War II.
The monastery or male abbey that was originally constructed by William in 1060 as a way of placating the Pope over his marriage that hadn't been quite sanctified. Originally it was the abbey and the hall to hold on to many of the charters and documents that established the abbey and the duchy in general. This building now functions as City Hall, and this room is now used as the Hall of Marriages. These are facsimiles of the royal seals from William through Henry III. William's granddaughter, Empress Matilda, by way of her marriage to Count Anjou Geoffrey Plantagenet, was the progenitor of the Plantagenet line that ruled England. It's the gardens that the monks would visit, enjoy some contemplative moments, surrounded all about by the walls of the monastery.
Here we are in the beautiful gardens of the Abbey of the Men that was originally constructed in 1057. 1060 took 7 years by William and his wife to placate the Pope over their rather inappropriate marriage, as they were cousins and it wasn't a sanctified marriage.
This sculpture was spared the collection and melting of all metals for the war effort by the Vichy government, but the bombings of the summer of 1944 did destroy it. It's housed here in the Abbey. The cloisters here provided sanctuary, refuge, protection from the bombings during the Normandy invasion and the subsequent air raids in the summer of '44. We're inside the church that adjoins the Abbey. The church is named for Saint Antien, Saint Stephen, and it's Roman style, so pre-Gothic, pre-Baroque, a little more simple in its architecture, but with glorious arches just the same. This explains the tumultuous passing and burial and reburial of William the Conqueror. Where we stand now is officially his final resting place. However, the only part of William that's actually resting in peace is a thigh bone. This display of pictures documents the role that Saint Etienne played during the battle, really provided shelter, refuge, ultimately food, place to sleep. The time of the bombing The city itself was nearly destroyed. Hundreds of people died on June 6th. These choir railings were a gift from the city of Hastings, 1927. Tomb of William the Conqueror. We've arrived at Omaha Beach. German bunker overlooking Omaha Beach. Inside one of the German bunkers. The officers and men of the 6th Naval Beach Battalion dedicate this plaque to our fallen comrades who gave their lives in defense of good over evil. They are the silent sentinels who, from their final resting place above the cliff, they perpetually watch over the sacred ground of Omaha Beach. Trying to get into the Norman castle of Caen, and the moat around it is not protected by shark or alligator infested water, or even by bears, but by vicious sheep. The castle shares grounds with the Museum of Normandy and the Museum of Fine Arts. From atop one of the parapets of the castle, you can see how it could look down on the city, protect it. The castle is going through some renovations. Not the first time. It was heavily damaged during the Battle of Caen in the summer of 1944. We've just left the palace that housed the trial and the retrial of Joan of Arc, and we're walking along a back street in Rouen on our way to our next stop. Now in front of the imposing cathedral, Notre Dame of Rouen. This is the cathedral that was painted numerous times by Monet. Houses these partial remains of Richard the Lionhearted and Viking king, founder of Normandy. This rose window is above one of the side entrances to the Notre Dame Cathedral. This stained glass window, which tells the story of St. Julian Hospitaller, it's one of the oldest pieces here in Cathedral of Notre Dame, dates from the early 1200s, and it's placed opposite the effigies of Rollo the Viking and one of the King Henrys of France. Carved and gilded altarpiece from the mid-1600s, intricate. On the sides of this chapel, a number of the bishops of Rouen are commemorated. This is the effigy of Richard the Lionhearted. See the lion resting underfoot. This chapel is dedicated to St. Joan of Arc. The statue itself is modern from 1956. The window here gives some detail. With Joan in armor, ready to go into war, surrounded by soldiers. The windows on this side of the cathedral are mostly intact. They were spared in the bombings of 1944. The windows that exist on this, all but one, are from the modern era, and I guess they're awaiting replacement of those that are still clear. We can discern the older stonework from that which was necessary to repair the damage done during World War II. Some of the statuary looks unharmed, and some, on the other hand, missing its heads. On this road is the Palace of Justice, and it was built over an apparent Jewish place of study and worship. The Palace of Justice construction began in the 1300s, continued through different periods. Some adjustments were made as the community required or due to wartime destruction, and restoration is still taking place.
Donc ils se disent, bah tiens, on va refaire le pavage. Par contre, la lumière, elle est constante. lumière qui va être très chaude. Après, vous chauffez la pièce, quoi.
This would have been an internal staircase from one floor to the next. Interior staircase that we saw from above. The lower level of the structure, very likely the yeshiva room.
Bah ça c'est des trous pour mettre des étagères, pour mettre des placards. Est-ce que c'est aussi une hypothèse?
You can pick out the words Habayit and Elyon.
Voilà, ça pouvait éventuellement aussi être une prison. C'est un petit curieux, pourquoi pas.
It's a quote from Lachim.
Le lieu multi-usage.
Gives it the name Maison Sublime. This is the bed and breakfast we're staying in Troyes. It's right along the water's edge. And we're taking a walk into town now, right along that water's edge. Over there is where we had dinner last night. And just very lovely area. Approaching the cathedral here in Troyes. Okay, St. Peter and Paul Cathedral, and as always, restoration work is going on here. So this cathedral, originally built over the course of 415 years from the 13th to the 17th century, undergoing refurbishment that has lasted just over a year at this point. We're beginning to take down some of the scaffolding, and they'll probably start the next part again in a year or two. These windows are particularly spectacular. Maybe it's just a juxtaposition for the very dark interior, but they are amazing. One of the rose windows here in this cathedral. This is a perfect example of a half-timbered home. The top floor juts out a bit to protect the front entrance. A lot of this area suffered multiple fires from the 1300s right through to the 1800s, but to see some of these homes from the earlier periods is a treat.
Across from the cathedral is the wine cellar.
All in one place, just a great little example of the architecture through the centuries. Okay, this is the narrowest street or lane in Troyes. It's referred to as Rue du Chat, the cat street, because cats would be able to walk from one home to the next, rooftop to rooftop or eave to eave. Wood manhole coverings. A number of these lanes are not much change from the time of Rashi. We're in the oldest church, St. Madeleine, in Troyes. Originally from the 12th century, refurbished partly during the 14th and 15th century. This is the first nave piece we've seen. This is some of the arches are noted to be somewhat awkwardly placed, mostly in the side chapels. It's because that method of reinforcement hadn't yet been quite perfected. This is a good example of not quite centering the arch, aligning it properly, but it's still standing. Apparently the sermons went on a bit too long for some. So this lane probably looked a lot like this. These small homes, these doors at that time. Okay. Legend has it that this was a street along which Rashi's mother walked, and it was such a narrow street that she feared that the oncoming traffic would harm her, so she took refuge up against the wall, which miraculously allowed for the tummy to be protected. That tummy held Rashi. The dedication plaque on the left side of the door is from the Republic of France, acknowledging the anti-Semitism and the suffering of the people, particularly from the years 1940 to 1944. We'll never forget. This device is designed to hold a champagne bucket. Besides champagne, Troyes was a true manufacturing town, known for its hosiery from the 1600s on. These are just some of the different looms that were used. These were all used in factories as opposed to home piece work.
An example of a capped neighborhood housing.
Some houses have appeared to settle a bit over the years. Not always quite straight and level. Another example. Okay, came to an market, which is all enclosed, but otherwise it's like an open-air market. Meats and fruits, cheeses and chocolates, and of course bottles of wine, probably champagne. We've got some fruit to go. Little mini sliders at the champagne event. Locks on tiny Bellini. We just come out of the parking for Fontainebleau, or Fontainebleau, as the direction lady told us. Anyway, this is a wonderful carousel. It's a 2-story carousel. In the Napoleon Museum in Fontainebleau. Portrait of Josephine.
Display of Napoleon's elaborate tableware.
Second wife, second Empress Mary Louise. Cradle for the son of Napoleon and Mary Louise, referred to as the King of Rome. Anne of Austria's bedroom. She herself was a queen and the mother of a king. Primarily from the 16th and 17th century. Ceiling, which was brought to this room, was created for Henry II's apartment. This ceiling, still in the apartments, was modified by each subsequent ruler with their coat of arms. This long hall is referred to as a gallery. It's Francois I from the mid-1500s. It's primarily carved wood, and then the pieces of art include the paintings and the sculptures above. This was the approach to the various queen's chambers. This is referred to as the Diana Gallery. The art on the ceiling it's tribute to Diana, depicts her amongst other things involved in hunting, and Fontainebleau had a reputation as a wonderful place for hunting parties and the like. It had fallen into disrepair, and Napoleon I had it redone in the same mode, but also transformed it into a library. It holds over 16,000 volumes. This was Marie Antoinette's game room. Bingo, other such games involving gambling and the like. Some of the art features Mercury, who's known to be the god of tricksters. This room was the bedchamber of the queens and empresses from end of the 16th century.
Originally a royal bedchamber, this was changed over to a throne room by Napoleon. The royal bee pattern in the draperies, the feathers above the throne, and the bee pattern is repeated on the throne itself. The portrait is of Louis XIV, but previously a portrait of Napoleon hung here.
Napoleon used this room as his private chambers. The bed and the winged victory all are his additions. And depictions of Cupid. We're in the Trinity Chapel, the last stop on our visit. We're in Versailles and watching some kids enjoy the Midway. Some kids not enjoy it quite as much. Celebrating Halloween a little early. Approaching Versailles. Louis XIV. (1638 to 1715).
This portrait of the Sun King Louis XIV adorns the stairway up to his rooms.
Another huge portrait on the next level of stairs, astride a horse. From the first room, which is covered in a blue fabric walls, just gorgeous, but the view of the gardens is even prettier. Richly decorated room, red velvet on the walls. The portraits are of various kings, and the larger pictures, paintings, are of military encounters, and some of them are absolutely tremendous. This room is full of portraits. Look like they're all family members, primarily from the 1600s. This room honors painters and sculptors of the different periods, posed with a bit of sculpture or a sketchbook. A couple of particularly charming paintings in this room, again of nobility. Little girl with a bubble. This little girl, future duchess, in absolutely stunning robes. This is the Royal Chapel. We saw just a sneak peek from below. Here we get to take it all in. Especially the magnificent ceilings. The doors feature Louis XIV's branding as the Sun King. The Diana room, used as both a billiards room and a ballroom, features 3 different types of marble. The royal bedroom, with a bed that had to be something of a challenge to climb into. Antechamber before we enter the Hall of Mirrors. Absolutely stunning. Each one is a little different. Reflecting in the Hall of Mirrors. Wave! From inside the Hall of Mirrors, which is stunning in itself, this glorious view all the way out through the gardens. Is this where he played chess? King's bedchamber. The bedchamber of Marie Therese. Wall treatments, flowered pattern brought right through to the bed and all furnishings. First we've seen any mark of Napoleon. It's him crowning his empress. And he has 2 other huge paintings in this room. Battle scene, 1799. And again, a battle scene, but him in his robes. Portrait of Louis XVI. And his queen, Marie Antoinette. The rain is threatening, so we have to enjoy the gardens as quickly as we can. But even now, end of October, they are just lovely. Somebody's busy. We've been able to see inside these huge windows. There are trees. This is basically a gorgeous gardener's shed. All these different citrus trees. Grapefruit, orange, lemon, all right here. Just beyond the chateau's gardens, here at the little lake, people out boating. This little swan obviously got lost. It's like he's going for lunch.
The 31st of October, 2022, 40 years. Here's a happy guy going over our first bridge.
And finally, here at the obelisk, we saw its twin in Luxor. The base explains its journey from Luxor to this spot. On the first level up of the Eiffel Tower, get a great perspective, a beautiful clear day. From the top level of the Eiffel Tower that we're going to, you can see the Arc de Triomphe.
Descent. Les Invalides.
Off in the distance, the Louvre. Make out the pyramids. So we were way up the top on this clear, beautiful day. We're walking along Quai Branly near the Seine, just having left the Eiffel Tower. And this building was designed specifically to be home to over 370 species of vegetation from around the world. In the distance, the gold dome of Hotel Invalides, originally a hospital. And this bridge is referred to as Pont Alexander III. That would be named for Tsar Alexander, a great friend of Napoleon. Having a special treat. Walking off dinner through the plaza in front of Hotel de Ville, which is City Hall, and they're already looking forward to the Olympics. Just crossed the bridge onto the island that is home to Notre Dame, and we pass another outdoor crepe maker. Passing by Notre Dame on our way back. Can't see the cranes at night, so it's a better picture. Now we're inside the pyramid. Yay! Quite as big as the impression made in the movies. Winged victory. Another depiction of the coronation of Napoleon and Josephine. This gallery room was originally designed for use by Louis XIV before he up and moved to Versailles. Many of these pieces are encrusted with small gems, primarily in the eyes of the different figures, including emeralds, rubies, sapphires. Example of the way the jewels were employed, all the way around the edge, tiny rubies. Again, a case of pieces being reused and remounted into the early 1800s.
Sapphires.
This emerald set was presented by Napoleon to Mary Louise upon their marriage. This tiny crown was made for Empress Eugenie, and was spared from destruction at the end of her reign. I don't think she's down there. And if she is, it's mighty noisy. May not be resting in peace. We've walked a very long time, not sure if we're lost, but I feel okay. Starting the day at the Orsay Museum, which is housed in a former train station. smaller version of Bartoli's and Eiffel's Statue of Liberty. Dig out both the orchestra and the ballet. Wild perspective from inside the clock. This is amongst the many pieces of Van Gogh's that are featured at the Orsay. Beyond the Scream, Edvard Munch did wonderful portraits.
Self-portrait of Edvard Munch, absolutely haunting.
Looked like a crowd of anxiety-ridden people out for an afternoon stroll.
One of the early sketches for the screen.
In the Basilica of Saint Denis, which is home to 70 effigy crypts, most of the kings and queens of France and some of their servants. We are beginning our tour, which explains the history and development
Of the depiction of royalty in effigy form, the sculpture, the development of symbolism in its depiction.
The dogs are at her feet. Over there, the rulers have ground beneath their feet. And here, there are apparently lions beneath the feet of this king and queen. Crypt depicting the family all praying, and this is from the mid-1500s. At this time, urns were commonly used to hold the heart or the heart and entrails of the king after death. The effigies here are depicted as close to the image, the natural image of the king and queen as was possible at the time. They are unclothed, and the feet are not set on any animals or any land. We're here in the Bourbon Chapel, which doesn't actually hold the remains of any of the Bourbons reference, except it does hold the heart of the child who would have reigned had the revolution not interrupted the line. He was the son of Marie Antoinette and King Louis XVI. It's been determined via DNA using Marie Antoinette's hair that in fact this is the actual heart of this child. It was installed only about 15 years ago after it had made its way over the last few hundred years into the hands of numerous different folks. The outside of the Pantheon. Inside the Pantheon, originally conceived during the reign of Louis XV, built during Louis XVI as a church tribute to Saint Genevieve. It has since performed a dual function. It's also the final resting place of many of the luminaries of French politics and science and literature, including the Curies and Émile Zola. The dome here is particularly notable as it is the highest in all of Paris. It's supported by 4 pillars, and the frescoes on its side took many years to complete, again mostly because of political upheaval. Against a backdrop of art that depicts the life of Saint Genevieve is this more modern sculpture, a tribute to those unknown who died in the service of France. The pillars are dedicated both to those who led the revolution and also those who led the restoration. In memory of those journalists and writers who passed during the period of World War II, 1939, 1945. Their names are noted here on the inside. And again, those writers who passed during the years of the First World War. Noted on either side. The dual character of this structure is no more evident than here, where you have a religious mosaic, glorious with all its gold, right above this huge scene of war, presumably depicting a moment of the revolution. This model of the Pantheon was used to promote its construction, to sell it, if you will, to the public at the time that it was going through its various stages of construction. So it predates the completed Pantheon itself. Amongst those honored are the political philosophers Voltaire here, and across the nave, Rousseau. One of the most recent reinterments is of Josephine Baker. Curies are amongst those who are entombed here, as well as a number of French resistance fighters from the World War II period. These two entombed here, leaders from the time of the Revolution, were advocates for tolerance and for equality of the Jewish population. Here lies some of the greatest authors of the French nation: Alexandre Dumas, Émile Zola, and Victor Hugo. Notre Dame, see the cranes, and down below, all of the work that's going on. Leaving a small island that's home to Notre Dame, and we're passing over the bridge of Notre Dame with all the locks. We're inside the Pompidou Center, which is known for its construction, the HVAC, the water, and such, being exposed, as well as being a museum for modern art. Now, inside the Pompidou Center, we came up escalators that gave us a view of the cityscape, this area, given that they're basically in the tubes. And off in the distance, we see Sacré-Cœur, the Sacred Heart, the hill of Montmarais. It's a place of worship for close to 2,000 years, going back to Roman times, and where both Saint Geneviève and Saint Denis were venerated. This is the oldest working clock in Paris. It's from the 14th century, and it's on the building that served both as a palace and Ministry of Justice, right next to Saint-Chapelle. We're in Saint-Chapelle, which is really breathtaking. The ceilings are painted dark blue with stars. The stained glass is the oldest existent in France and the tallest. Statues of the 12 apostles placed all around. And this chapel, which is filled with light, was reserved for nobility and royalty. Downstairs, which was very pretty, but much darker, is for the common folk. Spent some time today at the market, Marché Dauphine. So if one needs tapestry for their home or a dressing gown from the 1800s or vinyl records from the 60s, this is your place. And who couldn't find a place for this? Museum of Perfume. We are on a self-guided tour, learning about the history of perfume from the time of the Egyptians through current marketing. Some of the finest crystal makers are responsible for the most iconic perfume bottles. Referred to as the organ, This is a collection of the different essential oils that would be blended into a single perfume. We also learned about 3 different notes, the base, middle, and top notes, and how long each lasts. This is the Opera House. There's nothing going on here right now. However, standard seating arrangements at cafes nearly always have folks, rather than sitting across from each other, sitting so that they can people watch. We've got a rainy day, the Eiffel Tower in the distance, and we're in front of the Museum of Military, Hotel Invalides. We're gonna visit here. We're in the courtyard of the Invalides, which serves as both the Museum of the Military and the honored final resting place for notable members of the French military, including Napoleon, who was brought back from St. Helena by Louis Philippe in 1840 and interred here. We're in the Royal Church, the Dome Church. Dome above us, and placed directly beneath the dome are the remains of Napoleon. Around his tomb are the names of various victories. This is the tomb of Marshal Foch, a hero of World War I. It depicts his remains being supported by soldiers of that era, and there is a wreath of poppies. Heading down into the crypt, where Napoleon's sarcophagus rests. Napoleon's tomb contains his ashes, resting here in the middle of this rotunda that is surrounded by sculptures glorifying his various victories. The red stone is evocative of the red marble that was used for the kings of Rome in ancient times. This chapel was the initial resting place for Napoleon I when he was brought here. Note the imperial bees motif. Ultimately, it became the resting place of Jerome Napoleon I. And these chapels are dedicated to heroes of the Republic, of the era of Napoleon I, and of France under the Louis. We're in the Rodin Museum. I've gone through exhibit of a number of his paintings and the early pieces that he sculpted and out of marble and also created out of clay, many of them busts of his friends and his sponsors. This is a piece titled Brother and Sister. The kiss.
The thinker.
beautiful gardens right outside. A number of the roses are still in bloom, and a number of the pieces are on display. Heading over to Ile St. Louis, the smaller of the two islands in Seine. We arrived on Ile St. Louis and came upon a memorial to deported French martyrs from August 1944. Apparently, they were deported to Auschwitz, Birkenau, Ravensbrück, Lyon Vital. So this site was the spot in Paris where resistors, communists, Jews would be taken, held, and or executed, or transported away to the camps. The walls are covered in a recreation of the graffiti that was left behind by a number of the people who were unfortunate enough to be held here. Just walking along these quiet, charming streets here in St. Louis. We stopped for some ice cream treats here at St. Louis. Beautiful cone. That is a flower.